Alex. Thank you, Madeline and Janet, for special music and children's story. Well, happy Sabbath to everyone. We're going to try to answer a question today in our sermon that you've probably heard once or twice or three times in your life. And which came first, the chicken or the egg? How many of you have heard that question before? I think we all have. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? The egg. I didn't bring a chicken, but I probably. We're going to examine this question today. It's a very good question, especially for evolutionists. Wikipedia has some very interesting thoughts on it. It's written by what I call, Wikipedia is written by a lot of different people. And there's an article on the chicken and the egg, or the egg rather, that's in Wikipedia. And it was evidently written by an evolutionist. So I thought it'd be interesting for us to see what their answer to this question might be. But before we do that, I would have to say that it was written by a pseudo-intellectual. A pseudo-intellectual can be defined as someone who pretends to be more intelligent than they really are. There are some very intelligent people in this world that are still pseudo-intellectuals. They pretend, or they may actually think that they know more than they actually do. A pseudo-intellectual can exist in basically any field of study, including theology or science. Pose any question to a pseudo-intellectual and they can come out with an opinion or a theory that they tend to imply as factual and authoritative as opposed to just having an opinion. And so today I'd like for us to take a few moments and consider evolution in this term. Evolution is taught in most of our institutions of higher learning, but creation is taught in the highest institution of learning, the Bible and most Christian-based universities. Many, but certainly not all, scientists accept evolution versus creation. There's peer pressure that if you're just not truly a scientist if you believe in creation and God. And it's important for us to recognize this fact, this peer pressure, and the fallacies that underpin this false teaching, which is being taught each day to students in most schools and institutions of higher learning and our elementary schools, even in high schools. That is, our educational system is leading our students, our children, away from God toward a more godless society. Educational institutions are considered bastions of knowledge, but not everything that is taught is pure knowledge from God. But to accomplish this false teaching about evolution versus creation, evolutions have to have some secret sauce in the recipe. You know, you've seen a lot of recipes and it says, we've got this secret sauce that we have to add to the recipe. It makes it wonderful. Or evolutions have a secret sauce that they add. Well, it's actually not so secret. The ingredient that evolutionists add to their recipe for living creatures is time. Hundreds of millions of years, and even that is inadequate. And so to illustrate this point further, we're going to look at pseudo-intellectuals, that is, people that think or pretend they know more than they actually do. And it's not saying they're stupid people or anything. Some very smart people. But they think they're even smarter than they are. And so looking up Wikipedia, the chicken or the egg, I have a quote here that was obviously written by evolutionists. And so The person says, or the group says, because this is, peer reviewed, it says, although the question is typically used metaphorically, evolutionary biology provides literal answers. Well, that's interesting. Made possible by the Darwinian principle that species evolve over time, and thus that chickens had ancestors that were not chickens. Similar to a view expressed by the Greek philosopher Anaximander when addressing the paradox. Now we're going to stop here in the middle of the interstate, pull up the emergency brake, and put on flashers and talk about this paragraph. We're going to another source. It's from the University of Hawaii, and the title of this article was Practices of Science. Pay attention here. Practices of science, opinion, hypothesis, and theory. And so we're going to talk about these aspects of science. And this is very important for us to recognize or differentiate these elements. Opinion. How many people have an opinion? Everybody has an opinion. Virtually everyone has an opinion, but sometimes you'll see someone say, well, I don't have any opinion on that. An opinion is, and this is the definition here in this encyclopedia.com, an opinion is a view or judgment formed about something, not necessarily based on fact or knowledge, okay? Author Napoleon Hill had a cute little saying that had a lot of truth in it. Thought I'd put it in here. Napoleon Hill says, opinions are the cheapest commodities on earth. Everyone has a flock of opinions ready to be wished upon anyone who will accept them. If you're influenced by opinions when you reach decisions, you will not succeed in any undertaking. So that's the first thing, opinions. They're pretty cheap, they're plentiful, everybody's got them. We're going to move to stage two. Stage two is theory. Our scientific theory is a hypothesis that has been extensively tested, evaluated by the scientific community, and is strongly supported. Theories often describe a large set of observations and provide a cohesive explanation for those observations. An individual cannot come up with a theory. Theories, or this is the definition, theories require extensive testing and agreement within the scientific community. Theories are not described as true or right, but as the best supported explanation of the world based on evidence. Again, that came from the University of Hawaii. But beyond opinion, which is a cheap thing, cheap version, we have this theory and that is supported by observations and tests and peer reviews and all that. We have something that's a little bit, a whole lot higher. It's called a principle. A principle is a scientific law. Now, when we think about principles that God created, principles that we live by, we have the principle of aerodynamics, or we have the principle of gravity. Those are laws, no doubt about it. And actually the definition, a principle is a scientific law that has been proved beyond reasonable doubt. Now, based on these accepted definitions, we're going to, maybe we can back up to our first paragraph there on the chicken and the egg, and actually look at that paragraph once again. We have the opinions that are cheap, theories are a little bit better, principles are in concrete. Let's read that paragraph again. It says, although the question is typically used metaphorically in evolutionary biology, provides literal answers. Well, I don't know about that. Made possible by the Darwinian principle. Now, the Darwinian principle is not a law. It's not like gravity, not like aerodynamics or anything like that. And so, we already see some erroneous statements in this article on the chicken or the egg. This article does not even qualify as a theory because it's not been tested. doesn't qualify as a principle, and it's certainly not a law. It's not been extensively tested and therefore does not qualify even as a theory. And certainly, again, it does not qualify as a principle or scientific law beyond reasonable doubt. Let's continue with this chicken and egg evolution article from Wikipedia. It says that the question refers to eggs in general. This is the question of which came first, chicken or egg. Listen to what this person says, or group says. I don't know who wrote it. If the question refers to eggs in general, the egg came first. That makes absolutely no sense to me. This egg here, without a chicken, will not exist. Wouldn't you agree? That's the way I think. That's logic, I think. But they say if the question refers to eggs in general, the egg came first. First, the amniote egg, that is a hard shell egg that could be laid on land rather than remaining in water, like the eggs of a fish or amphibians. Get ready, sit down, hold your hands. Appeared around 312 million years ago. I told you that there's some secret sauce in evolutionary theory. 312 million years ago. In contrast, chickens are domesticated descendants of red jungle fowl and probably arose a little more than 8,000 years ago at most. Can anyone test or prove evolution as a theory that by evolution's own criteria here took hundreds of millions of years? In the chicken and egg article, how can you test a theory that's purported to have occurred over a period of 312 million years? Are they really sure? Maybe that number is off 200 million years. Or maybe it's just off 312 million years. This secret ingredient of unimaginable lengths of time is designed to thwart the logic of there being an intelligent designer, God, who created this world and all that is in there. Let's move on to the third paragraph here. The person says in the Wikipedia, if the question refers to chicken and egg specifically, the answer is still the egg. But the explanation is more complicated, they say. The process by which the chicken arose through the interbreeding and domestication of multiple species of wild jungle fowl is poorly understood. I would have to agree with that somewhat. And at the point at which this evolving organism became a chicken is a somewhat arbitrary distinction. Whatever criteria one chooses, an animal nearly identical to the modern chicken, that is a proto-chicken, laid a fertilized egg that had DNA making it a modern chicken due to mutations in the mother's ovum, the father's sperm, or the zygote. This is the basis of evolutionary thought here. The pseudo-intellectuals who authored this Wikipedia article do not even try to theorize where the wild jungle fowl came from, which is a 10,000-pound gorilla in the room. Dr. Michael Behe, he's a professor of biological science at Lehigh University. He's a biochemist and a leading intelligent design adherent. He writes this. Listen to what this professor writes. He says it was disillusionment with Darwinian evolution and not religious teachings that led Behe to embrace ID, that is intelligent design. Let me get it. Dr. Behe writes, he says, perhaps I can help. After all, I used to believe that a Darwinian process did indeed build the wonders of life. I had no particular animus against it, yet I believed it on the say-so. That is, he believed in evolution. Listen to what he says. I believed it on the say-so of my instructors and the authority of science, not on hard evidence. When I read a book criticizing Darwin's theory from an agnostic viewpoint, it startled me. And then began a literature search for real evidence that random mutation and natural selection could really do what was claimed for them. I came up completely empty. In the over 30 years since then, I've only become more convinced of the inadequacy of Darwinism and more persuaded of the need for intelligent design at ever deeper levels of biology, as detailed in my books. Nothing has changed. Behe still concludes that, quote, random mutation, natural selection works great in folks' imagination, but it's a bust in the real world. And the plant kingdom is even more baffling. Wikipedia says, evidence of the emergence of embryophyte land plants first occurred, hold on, the secret sauce is coming. Evidence of the emergence of embryophyte land plants first occurred in the middle of the Ordovician, that's 470 million years ago. I gotta have a tickle today. And by the middle of the Devonian period, which was only 390 million years ago. Many of the features recognized in land plants today were present, including roots and leaves. It's funny that we know all this stuff about what happened almost 500 million years ago, but man does not really truly understand how the ancient civilizations even built the pyramids. Inanimate objects just a few thousand years ago, much less what happened millions ago before the earth was created. Michael Behe explains how ridiculous evolutionary thought is by using something as simple as a mousetrap. Mousetrap has only 3 working parts, 3 moving parts. All 3 of these parts have to be in place simultaneously and actually work together for the mousetrap to work. Random mutations could never become a reality where multiple mutations would have to occur simultaneously to work. But creation, I have got a real tickle tonight. Creation is trillions and trillions of times more complex than a mousetrap. Our bodies, the bodies of all animals and fish in the plant kingdom, with all of the food supplies for the various creatures, the perfect blend of oxygen in the atmosphere and water, the correct distance from the sun, the food chain, the perfect rotation speed of our earth, millions of things that are interdependent in a perfect ecosystem of plants and animals and environment that works together, and it works together immediately. Just as an example of comparison, how many of you heard of the planet Venus? You've heard of the planet Venus, right? Mercury, Venus, Earth. Let me share something about if we had evolved on Venus. Just strain your mind for just a moment here. If you had evolved on the planet Venus, Venus completes one rotation every, we have 24 hours. Venus completes one rotation. It's really, really slow. It takes 243 Earth days for Venus to make one revolution. In fact, one day on Venus would be like 8 months on the Earth, 4 months of light and 4 months of darkness. Venus spins backwards, and it goes so slow that it revolves around the sun in less than one Venus day. Crazy, crazy. The average temperature on Venus is 843 degrees Fahrenheit. Obviously, there's no life there, but God made the earth. He made it good. He made it perfect. All the nutrients for plants and animals had to be there at once. It would not do any good to have a person there, for example, and they'll say, well, the food supply will come in another 10 million years. That's the kind of thing that will not work. Bees had to be created at the same time there were flowers for pollination and flowers to support the mature bees. Entire systems had to be in place at the very same time. Innumerable things had to be created that worked together, that had to be created at the very same time for things to work. Just look at the complexity of the human body for a moment and all the systems that are in our body when we look in the mirror in the morning. The gray matter that we call a computer and a brain coordinates all of our body functions, even when we are sleeping. Think about the digestive system and all its components that give us energy from thousands of different foods. What car engine do you know that could run on thousands of different fuels? How about the circulatory system with thousands of miles of arteries and veins? The British Heart Foundation says, listen to this now, this is pretty amazing. By adulthood, we have 60,000 miles of blood vessels in our body. That's more than twice the distance around the world. Mind-boggling. And then we have a heart that pumps blood continuously, 24 hours a day, sometimes for over 100 years. And that coordinates with the lungs to intake oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide from the individual's cell metabolism. At the same time, take food to the cells from our digestive system and eliminate the waste byproducts. What about the body's ability to clot blood when you get cut, or the healing process where the body corrects whatever is wrong with you? What about the nervous system that transmits messages all over the body, and our wonderful eyes that allow us to see, ears to hear, nerves to smell, body parts to walk and talk and move and touch? What about our digestive system that starts in our mouth with teeth for breaking down the food, our tongue that moves food around, the saliva that starts breaking the food down, our esophagus, the different sphincter muscles, the stomach, the chemicals in our stomach, the small intestines and the large intestines, and we'll stop right there, but you get the picture. All the living creatures and plants fully developed had to be in place at once because of interdependencies that are necessary to exist and have God's perfect ecosystem. The psalmist wrote in Psalm 139:14, he says, I will praise you, for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. 1 John 4:6 says, we are from God, and whoever knows God listens to us. But whoever is not from God does not listen to us. This is how we recognize the spirit of truth and the spirit of falsehood. Now, from time to time, I've made reference of back in the good old days when I went to Four Oaks School. My family has heard this many times, all the things I learned at Four Oaks. It seems that I remember more of my foundational learning at Four Oaks than even in my college days. One of the things I learned in 10th grade biology was about a brilliant man named Louis Pasteur. He lived 1822 to 1895, lived through most of the 1800s. Most people have heard about him, or at least have heard about pasteurized milk, from which was named after him. And this week I read an excellent article about him and the battles he contended with other scientists of his day. Here's an article from Wikipedia, no less. Louis Pasteur was a French chemist, pharmacist, and microbiologist renowned for his discoveries of the principles of vaccination, microbial fermentation, and pasteurization, the last of which was named for him. His research in chemistry led to remarkable breakthroughs in the understanding of the causes and preventions of diseases, which laid down the foundations of hygiene and public health and much modern medicine. Pasteur's works are credited with saving millions of lives through the developments of vaccines for rabies and anthrax. He's regarded as one of the founders of modern bacteriology and has been honored as the father of bacteriology and the father of microbiology, together with Robert Koch. And the letter epithet also attributed to I guess Antony van Leeuwenhoek, I guess. I butchered that, but anyway. Pasteur was responsible for disproving, this is what I remember in school, he was responsible for disproving the doctrine of spontaneous generation. Under the auspices of the French Academy of Sciences, his experiment demonstrated that in sterilized and sealed flax, nothing ever developed. Conversely, in sterilized but open flask, microorganisms could grow. For this experiment, the Academy awarded him the Alembert Prize, carrying 2,500 francs in 1862. Pasteur is also regarded as one of the fathers of German theory of disease, or germ theory of diseases, which was a minor medical concept at the time. His many experiments showed that diseases could be prevented by killing or stopping germs, thereby directly supporting the germ theory and its application in clinical medicine. He's best known to the general public for his invention of the technique of treating milk and wine to stop bacterial contamination, a process now called pasteurization. Louis Pasteur made other discoveries as well, but I think perhaps his most important contribution to science was that a phrase, life begets life. Just as the Bible states in Genesis, where God created the plants and animals and mankind and told his creation to multiply, Louis Pasteur believed in God, and he opposed Darwinism, which was rising at the same time that he was alive. Darwin was coming about, which had gained prominence during this period of time, for the pseudo-intellectuals. He disproved spontaneous generation, that life could spontaneously come from inanimate materials. And even though he scientifically proved that spontaneous generation was a false premise, he was opposed by some who were considered top scientists of his day. Pouchet was a well-known French biologist during this period of time, and he believed in spontaneous generation, that life could arise from inanimate materials with no parents. Here's some thoughts about Louis Pasteur, and I'd like to share this. Is from an author. This is an important concept for us to recognize as Christians. It says, we are in danger of losing the remembrance of noble-minded biologists with a creation worldview through whom God poured out scientific achievements. Indeed, the memories of man's past discoveries in all fields are soon forgotten unless we are reminded. Many people are familiar with the name Louis Pasteur and his amazing accomplishments in pasteurization and vaccination and the germ theory of disease, yet few know the details of his early life regarding the spontaneous generation controversy or his religious faith. In recent years, Pasteur's view on the evolution and God's creation have been openly challenged. The movement to revise history in America is hardly surprising, as Western civilization is becoming increasingly hostile regarding its Judeo-Christian roots. In an alarming trend, history continues to be altered by politically correct revisionist historians. The article that this person goes ahead and writes, he says, challenges the secular historian's efforts to rewrite the life and beliefs and discoveries of Louis Pasteur, in particular his views on origins, the Christian faith, and his work on spontaneous generation as it relates to germ theory. Proverbs 18:2, a fool has no delight in understanding, but in expressing his own heart. That he's got opinions, goes back to our earlier thing. He's interested in expressing his opinions. Psalm 53:1, God says, the empty-headed fool has said in his heart, what? There is what? No God. And there are plenty of people that are saying that. Corrupt and evil are they, and doing abominable iniquity. There is none who does good. Another quote here says, Louis Pasteur's calling was to investigate God's creation and to help mankind through his discoveries. Let no one claim that faith in God is a detriment to science. Pasteur said, listen to this, Pasteur said, the more I study nature, the more I stand amazed at the work of the Creator. Chargaff says, now one could say at the risk of some superficiality that there exist principally two types of scientists. Two types. The ones, and they are rare, wish to understand the world, to know nature. The second, the others, far more frequent, wish to explain it. The first are searching for truth, often with the knowledge that they will not attain it. That is, there are some things that don't understand. The second group, however, strive for plausibility, and that's where all these opinions come in, for the achievement of an intellectually consistent and hence successful view of the world. I noticed just a couple of days ago there was a news article. The title of it was interesting. Discovery of dark oxygen from deep sea metal lumps could trigger rethink of origins of life. Discovery of dark oxygen from deep sea metal lumps could trigger rethink of origins of life. In conclusion today, Pasteur began in 1844 by sorting out the right and left-handed crystals. That was his first thing that he did. And he spent the rest of his life patiently and fruitfully sorting right and left-handed facts. The Creator blessed these efforts by revealing His truth as He faithfully revealed operational science to those who diligently seek Him, Hebrews 11:6. By God's grace, Pasteur received the answers to these challenging questions. Some of Pasteur's letters to his children breathe a profound and simple piety. Pasteur was a Catholic, by the way, but he was a very pious, religious, godly man. He declared, the more I know, the more nearly is my faith that of the Breton peasant. Could I but know all, I would have the faith of a Breton peasant woman. Above all, what he could not understand is the failure of scientists to recognize the clear evidence of the Creator's hand in the world around us. I personally believe that God raised up Louis Pasteur as a truth bearer to fight the spread of Darwin's evolutionary teachings. It was truly a blessing to read about this man this week and study. We just covered a little bit about him. But this was a man of faith and how he had to fight the pseudo-intellectuals of his day. Satan has attacked. He's tried to destroy man's relationship with his Creator. He's attacked the fourth commandment, Sabbath, observance of God's creatorship, by deceiving men into making a false day of worship. He's deceived men about creation through the teaching of evolution. And today, evolution masquerades as a scientific reality when it is a scientific false ideology that deceives men into rejecting God in the Bible based on pseudoscience. Evolutionary thought has even crept into various Christian churches, such as the Catholic Church, who now teach there's no problem of believing in evolution and the Bible. But God said His work of creation was good. It was complete at the end of the literal creation week. God does know He was there. By the way, we started out with a question. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? That question was actually answered roughly 3,500 years ago when God inspired Moses to write Genesis. The answer of the chicken and the egg is wrong in the encyclopedia or Wikipedia. The correct answer is found in Genesis 1. The chicken was first. The chicken and God, for he created not only a chicken, he created a male rooster. The same day so that they could multiply. All the pieces of the chicken and the rooster are ready and perfect on that day. Genesis 1 says, Then God said, Let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heavens. So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves with which the waters abounded according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind, and God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth. So the evening and the morning were the fifth day. The answer to this old question is older than the question. 3,500 years ago, God inspired Moses to write this. We have to be careful as we go through life. Satan is, don't ever underestimate Satan. Don't underestimate him. He's smart, a lot smarter than me and you. He's more powerful than me and you. But we got a big brother. God is much more powerful, much more knowing, and he's on our side, or we're on his side.